Jelly is the absolute dessert of the summers. Using experimental shapes, flavors and colors, this simple dessert resides in all of our favorite childhood sweet memories. Welcome, you're listening to TALRadio powered by Touch Your Life Foundation, and this is Foodology. I'm radio host Devansh, and on this show, I talk about the enormous world of a little word called food. Jelly is like food architecture, whose wobbly and wiggly characteristics have adorned tables of royalty and intrigued many noble figures throughout history. Jams and jellies are two popular words that you are already familiar with, and so are other people of the world. They are used interchangeably in many recipes. So you may question that what sets them apart. As for jelly, to be precise, jelly is a flavored dessert made by warming and then cooling a liquid containing gelatin or a similar setting agent in a mold so that it sets into the semi-solid or somewhat elastic mass. Today, bakeries, restaurants and catering companies all use fruit jelly either to decorate or to fill pastries and cakes, or to put shine on cheesecakes, croissants, fruit buns and other baked goods. They also used to make mousse, ice creams, bonbons, pastry creams. The sky is the limit. Jelly beans are also another form of jelly, and they are more than just a candy. They are an essential part of the American culture and are adored by children and the young at heart from the East Coast to the West Coast. Jelly Belly is one of the most popular producers of jelly beans in the country, specializing in whimsical and delicious flavors. You may not like green beans, black beans, or pinto beans, but one thing's for sure, that you can never get enough of jelly beans. People enjoy jellies in so many forms. Enter a candy store or even walk by a candy kiosk. We get tempted by the amazing assortment of jellies, their colors, flavors, shapes and sizes. The wobbly feeling of a jelly makes for a fun experience for our senses. Jelly in the West is either flavored gelatin dessert or fruit juices cooked with sugar and pectin, and they taste more like a jam. But when you say jelly anywhere in Asia, they will ask you what kind. In fact, every region has its own type of jelly made from exciting, all-natural ingredients. For some Asians, jelly is an essential part of a regular diet. Say for instance, boba, almond jelly, aam papad, and more. There are numerous desserts which feature jellies alongside other ingredients to offer an array of textures and mouthfeel. No matter what jelly is to different nations, one thing in common is that they are all preserves. Jams, jellies, spreads, and marmalades are all cousins, and the history of jelly is intertwined with the history of its cousins and starts with the history of food preservation. Let's go back in time, when humans started preserving foods and discovered different techniques to keep food fresh for longer periods. The first steps towards modern preservation methods were spurred by Napoleon in 1785. Mankind has used many ways to preserve foods in the last, say, 60,000 years. It is only in the last 200 years that the methods have been developed to preserve food that keep them closest to its original fresh form. Humans started preserving foods since the Stone Age. They had already realized that if they could save food that they collected in times of plenty, it would make survival easier during times of scarcity. Fast forward Cooks in the Middle East are credited with the first preparation of jams and preserves thousands of years ago. They used honey because sugar at that time was not discovered. The people of New Guinea in the South Pacific domesticated sugarcane somewhat around 9,000 or 10,000 years ago. This plant later came to India, and around 1 AD, Indians developed a method to refine sugar and crystallize it, which was not exactly like the sugar we eat today, but somewhat similar. The mingling of sugar from East with people from the West took place when Alexander invaded India. The Westerners were surprised to see a commodity that was sweet and was not the same as the extensive and hard process of harvesting honey. Marmalade is thought to have been created in 1561 by the physician to Mary, the Queen of Scots, when he mixed oranges and crushed sugar to keep her seasickness away. Jelly came centuries later because it required gelatin to set. Even though gelatin had been made since ancient times by boiling animal and fish bones, it was a laborious process which was undertaken by the wealthy people, and it wasn't really applied to desserts. Aspic made from meat or fish stock appeared in Egyptian wall paintings that seemed to have disappeared from sight and forgotten sometime after the fall of ancient Egypt. Aspic later resurfaced in French cuisine at the beginning of the Renaissance, around 1400. Kitchens of the wealthy turned out fancy aspics and desserts. Powdered gelatin was invented in 1682 by Denis Papin, a French physicist, mathematician, and inventor. It was during the 18th century that the use of gelatin as a pudding jelly became increasingly popular, with dishes being colored with saffron, spinach, and they were being flavored with sugar and other spices. Jams and jellies came to the US with colonizers. Today, the US produces about 1 billion pounds of fruit spreads, which all include jams, jellies, preserves, spreads, marmalades, etc. annually. Now you would have realized that most often the term jam and jelly are used interchangeably, but there is a difference, and a very prominent one. Jam, on the one hand, refers to a product made with whole fruit, cut into pieces or crushed and cooked. Jellies, on the other hand, can be made of either fruit juice or other liquids, but the one thing that jellies have and jams don't is the setting agent or the gelling agent, which makes a jelly wobble and gives it the distinct texture, appearance, and mouthfeel. Jelly is firm and will hold its shape. Jam doesn't hold its place and is more like a soft pulp. To make a liquid hold its shape, certain ingredients are required to be mixed and at certain stage. Initially, through history, gelatin was the most popular gelling agent. Isinglass, which was the dried swim bladder of fish, and Irish moss, which is a seaweed, were also used to make gels. But in today's world, there are so many ingredients which are used as jellying agents. Let's talk about some of the most popular ones. Let's start with gelatin. Gelatin is extracted from the skin and bones of animals. It has a low melting point. That is why jellies made with gelatin melt in your mouth. Gelatin and collagen-like mixtures were used as glue as long as 8,000 years ago. There are also records of a type of savory jelly served in the royal courts in England in the Middle Ages. Boiling the bones extracts the proteins, which solidifies as it cools. This is what produces the gelatinous fatty layer on top of a homemade stock, and gelatin is extracted from that. Gelatin comes in two forms, sheet and powder. The sheet gelatin needs to be soaked in cold water first to soften them and is then directly added to the hot liquid which needs setting. The powder gelatin is mixed with room temperature water, is melted and then is added to the liquid. Pectin. Pectin is a type of starch that occurs naturally in the cell walls of fruits and vegetables and gives them structure. When pectin is combined with sugar and acid, it is what makes jams and jellies develop a semi-solid texture when they cool. Some fruits like apples and quince and the rinds, seeds and membrane of citrus fruits are naturally very high in pectin. For home kitchen uses, pectin is sold as a white or light brown powder or even as a colorless liquid. Agar. It is also one of the most popular jelly in Southeast Asia. It is a vegan alternative to gelatin and can form a much stronger gel as compared to it. This jelly-like substance is a mixture of carbohydrates that have been extracted from red algae, which is a type of seaweed. Legend has it that agar was actually first discovered in Japan around the mid-1600s. A Kyoto innkeeper discarded some leftover seaweed soup one winter night and found that it had gelled the next day. Since then, agar became a special dessert ingredient across Asia through trade and Japanese expansion in the following centuries. Agar comes in strips, flakes, and powder form. Now you know about some of the most popular ingredients used to make jellies. You may wonder, how does a free-flowing liquid transform into this solid, wobbly and playful dessert? I told you, humans are so intrigued by everything that wobbles. The science behind this wobble is actually very simple. Anytime you immerse or dissolve a gelling agent into a liquid, the fibers and the proteins, they form chains. These chains trap water inside of them. And as the liquid cools, the chains or the mesh gets closer and closer, turning the liquid into a solid. It is very important to have the right balance of water, sugar, pectin, or the other gelling agent, and food acid. Pectin, for instance, has the ability to form a network in water, trapping the rest of the food material to create a gel. However, it does not do this independently. Sugar and pH level of the food also play an important role. Sugar absorbs and traps water, pulling it away from the pectin polymer and hence bringing the pectin closer together, almost like tightening a belt. This produces a stronger gel. Whereas if the liquid contains too less sugar, the jelly will be water-like. The ratio of other ingredients depend on what things you have available on hand and what kind of end product you desire. For example, pineapple contains an enzyme called bromelain, and kiwi contains an enzyme called actinidin. Both of these enzymes are proteases, which means that they will eat up protein molecules in the same way that the digestive enzymes in your intestines break up the proteins to allow you to digest them. This means that when they are mixed with gelatin, these enzymes will eat up the gelatin protein and won't allow the jelly to set at all. Therefore, to make jellies of fruits with such enzymes, a different gelling agent would be required and a different preparation procedure would be followed. Many jellies are thickened with starch, for instance the infamous boba or bubble tea. These chewy balls are a Taiwanese invention. Tapioca starch from cassava root is molded into dough, then cut and shaped into balls and is cooked in hot water. These are also jellies. Then there's grass jelly, which is an East Asian specialty made by boiling the stalks and leaves of Chinese Misona mint plant with soluble white salt and starch. Then it is cooled to a block jelly and cut into cubes or thin strips. It has a unique fragrance with a slightly smoky and grassy flavor, served in many delicious desserts across Asia. So, there are many different types of jellies which use different preparation methods, different gelling agents, and a different science of working. There are so many different types of jellies all over the world, and you would have enjoyed so many candies throughout your life. Long before the age of Jello, foods made from gelatin were considered a mark of sophisticated entertainment. These edible gels were based on collagen, an animal protein, most popularly gelatin. Leo Hirschfeld mixed sugar and flavors with powdered gelatin and packed it as a quick dessert, and he achieved a lot of success from it. Soon, a cough syrup maker named Pearl Waite produced a fruit-flavored gelatin dessert, and his wife Mary named it Jello. Through clever marketing strategies, including celebrity endorsements, free recipe books, and free gelatin molds to make fancy shapes, the Jello brand took off. Jello was also one of the foods served to American soldiers during the World War II. The increasing demand for convenient foods has boosted the market for jams, jellies, and preserves throughout the world. It has been observed that jams, jellies, and preserve makers these days are using ripe as well as semi-ripe fruits and sugar alternatives like pectin to make their products more colorful and tastier. There's an increased demand for healthy, nutritious, innovative, and organically produced jams, jellies, and preserves in the world. So don't worry, go ahead and choose from the beautiful array of options that you have available all around you. Thank you so much for sticking around with me on this episode of Foodology. I had an incredible time talking to you. This is radio host Devansh signing off. Hope you have a beautiful and a magical day ahead. See you soon.